and also some questions.
Perfect.
Design and manufacturing trend today.
Yeah, so that's a very good question. There's a lot of changes that have happened in the semiconductor industry over the last 10 to 15 years. And if you look at what makes the semiconductor companies differentiated versus their peers, a lot of the trend is to shrinking to smaller and smaller package sizes, higher and higher integration onto a single chip. That drives up test complexity because it drives up the complexity of the chip itself. One of the things that we've observed, if you look 10 years ago, it was very common for the person who designed the chip to be responsible to test the chip. And so that individual would send his chip to the fab, the chip would come back, he would test it, oftentimes with manual testing techniques, and then he would certify that the chip is good. What's happened as the chips have become more complex, many organizations have begun to standardize the testing to an automated process. And so today, in a typical organization, the engineer designs his chip, sends it to the fab, the first design comes back, and it goes to a characterization test group. And the goal and the function of that group is they get chips coming in, they send test reports out, and their entire job is to characterize the chip in every possible scenario they could. And they become experts in software and test methodologies and metrology, which is very different than the skill set of sort of the traditional analog CMOS designer. So I think that process of how chips are getting designed is changing, and it's part of the reasons why we are involved in the industry, because one of the things that's unique about National Instruments is our ability to automate the measurement process and to do that very quickly. And so a lot of customers ultimately will choose National Instruments because they can actually characterize their chips more quickly, which is a time to market method.
And my next question is, what is the role in testing in semiconductor?
What is our role in testing? So we part of our role in testing is in the validation phase. It's also in the production phase too. So once the chip is a certified good design and it goes to production, there's typically a team called the NPI team, or the New Product Introduction team, and they're responsible to develop the manufacturing test software that's going to ultimately test a chip before it goes into the end device. And so we supply those organizations with test hardware and software. So instrumentation, which is based on PXI, it's a modular platform, packaged inside a semiconductor test system, which is a more traditional ATE look and feel type configuration. And that semiconductor test system, STS, will go into their fab or into their factory to actually do manufacturing test as each chip gets produced.
What are the market? I'm asking you as marketing person. I am asking, what are the marketing recent challenges?
The marketing challenges?
Yeah.
The market drivers or the market challenges?
Market drivers as well as market challenges.
Yeah, that's a very complex but a good question. So there's a number of market drivers happening right now. Obviously, we talked a little bit about integration, creates complexity, throughput challenges, desire to go to multi-site. That's a part of it. One of the other challenges that we're seeing, or one of the other market trends we're seeing, is the increase in chips with analog capacity. So you see that in front-end modules for RF and wireless, the combination of Bluetooth transceivers with microcontrollers and MCUs into single package. That's an increasing analog capability. We see a lot of new sensor types, particularly around optical or new like inertial sensors and that sort of thing. So there's a lot of very new analog capabilities. And in many instances, those become market drivers because it creates the need for a new solution from a customer's perspective. Right now, we're seeing this with 5G, where because there's a 5G part that has to get manufactured, but can't be tested with the current test equipment, that specific customer has to find a new solution. And that creates an opportunity for disruption of the industry, but it's an inflection point that requires change from the customer point of view. And that also sort of leads to the marketing challenge, where when you look at the customer's perspective and what they care about, a ATE in a semiconductor factory is effectively printing money. Every chip that comes out is revenue. And if you're the person responsible for maintaining the system printing money, and that system stops working, your job is on the line. And so that individual faces a tremendous amount of risk in any change to their money printing machine. And so one of the marketing challenges is identifying the customers who've reached the point where they have to change their solution, either because there's a new technology that can't be tested, because they've increased capacity to the level that the traditional ATEs can't support them. Sometimes we see instances where their capacity increases so high and their cost requirements go down so low that the traditional ATE just can't support them anymore. And so finding those customers and understanding what the requirements are for those customers is honestly what's making STS become successful.
And what is the NI focus in semiconductor testing?
Yeah, so NI is focused on a wide range of semiconductor devices. Most of the ones that we're differentiated in testing are the heavily analog components. So some of those include power amplifier front-end modules and RFICs, the Bluetooth, 802.11 MCU type devices, MEMS devices, optical devices, mixed signal like DACs and ADC. So a lot of the devices with significant analog components are an area where NI tends to be fairly differentiated. And part of the reason for that is the traditional AT has historically been more focused on the heavy digital, and NI is, as a modular instrument vendor, historically, has developed a tremendous amount of expertise on analog measurement accuracy with products like source measure units and RF signal generators and analyzers and kind of precision DC instruments. So any device that requires significant DC or RF or general analog measurement capability tends to be a good target for National Instruments.
Now, my next question is, what are your latest introduction in semiconductor testing?
Yeah, there's a number of those. So if I could just kind of rewind over the past 6 months, we've recently, about 6 months ago, introduced the 5G test capability into our RFIC production test offering. So we can out test 4G, 5G parts. That's been pretty critical because we're just now getting close to the point of broad commercialization for the sub-6 gigahertz portion of 5G. One of the probably the most recent newsworthy items is the release of a product called Instrument Studio, and that was just announced here at NI Week. And Instrument Studio is unique because it gives you a debug software experience that looks and feels like a traditional instrument, but it can be used in parallel with an automation sequence. So it's honestly one of the products that many of our current customers are most excited about because it gives them a much easier to use way to debug if there's an issue with a current process in automated testing.
Can you talk about the market and your leading position in semiconductor industry?
Yeah, so NI is still fairly new on the whole into the semiconductor test market. Certainly on the characterization side and the R&D lab side, we've been at that for a long period of time. One of the things that we found probably about 10 years ago is customers started taking our modular PXI platform and building their own ATEs around it and putting it into the production test kind of environment. And that's what motivated us in part to create the semiconductor test system, where we sort of take the existing PXI system, put it in the ATE form factor, and then sell that as a commercial ATE and develop a lot of the fixturing and closures and kind of the factory integration pieces around it. So that transition happened, I think, about 5 years ago. And today we're actually one of the fastest growing ATE vendors in the industry.
And what is your future outlook for semiconductor industry and its growth?
Yeah, so there's a bright future for the semiconductor industry. I think one of the things that's changing is that this industry has historically been fueled by consumer electronics, right? Devices like mobile phones and televisions and other consumable devices is really what's driven the volume of that market historically. I think that one of the interesting trends is the influence of other industries like the automotive industry, which are dramatically increasing the amount of semiconductor product inside as you deal with technologies like ADAS and automated driving and vehicle electrification. So I think that one of the shifts we're seeing is a shift to where other industries outside of consumer devices are driving some of the requirements and test needs.